There's a story I like to share in order to demonstrate in a much higher resolution what impact is. It is taken from the book of Genesis from the Old Testament, and it's about the initial encounter between Rebekah and Isaac. The story goes, Abraham sends his servant to find a wife for Isaac, and the servant meets Rebekah by the well, etc. In the end, Rebekah decides to go in a caravan of camels to meet Isaac and be his wife. In the Hebrew version, it is said that Rebekah looked up, saw Isaac from afar, and fell from the camel. That moment in which Rebekah sees Isaac from a distance for the first time and falls off the camel is a moment that we could call a moment of impact. Something impacts her, and it is possible to stop and go deeper into it. What happens at that moment? What is it that hits her? What is it that impacts Rebekah to the point of falling? Is it a romantic comedy? Does she fall due to the impact of an initial infatuation? Either an understanding here that is perhaps related to sexuality? Does she suddenly realize that this is the man she must unite with? There are those who say that Isaac was in a spiritual state that impacted Rebekah. And there's another option I like to contemplate, that what hits Rebekah off the camel are undigested mental materials from the sacrifice of Isaac. That is, Isaac experienced a trauma, the trauma of the quasi-sacrifice. The trauma is not processed or digested, and something about this lack of processing hits Rebekah. When the mind can't hold something, all kinds of components disperse and are part of what hits, impacts, and knocks Rebekah off the camel. That is, one of the meanings of impact is our capacity and our consent as therapists to be impacted, first of all, by undigested and unprocessed components related to the mental development of the patient. Dr. Eigen writes, most often impacts are shocks, the shock of one personality impacting on another. The taste of the shock comes through in a micro moment, although sometimes one wades through layers of numbness to get the taste. I want to touch upon those undigested and unprocessed areas of mental development a little more and sharpen them a little more. What are those places? I want to present two proposals, one from a paper by Ferenczi and one from Winnicott. Ferenczi, in his article on the confusion of tongues, writes in the context of sexual abuse, but is correct in any place where something bigger than we can contain occurs. These children feel physically and morally helpless. Their personalities are not sufficiently consolidated in order to be able to protest, even if only in thought. That is, something happens before you have the tools to think about what happened. It is as if something metallic, a foreign body, was planted inside you, and you cannot even think that it has happened to you. Something just happened that you know impacts you and confuses you, but you can't think about it or express it. Winnicott, in a rather similar context, writes about the heavy influence of environmental failure at early ages in his article on psyche soma. Winnicott writes that there's an environmental failure before the psyche soma had become sufficiently well organized to hate or to love. Instead of hating these environmental failures, the individual became disorganized by them because a process existed prior to hating. These are very deep dynamics. That is, something hits you before the tool is sufficiently built to hold a feeling and know what you feel about it, and actually feel what's happening. Again here, there's a plantation. It disrupts the internal order, and there's no ability to conceive what actually happened. So psychic events that were not recognized during mental development, like Isaac's trauma, are like an initial blow, shocking you, causing you to lose consciousness, then this undigested event impacts the other. It is part of the impact that flows between two people. If the therapist is ready to take in and taste the patient's shock, the primal extract, his unconscious processes begin to work and digest the initial shock of the patient, who received no recognition. This consent to be impacted begins to insert movement, breath, and life into a mental piece that is lying on the ground unconscious. In other words, it begins to dream it into existence. Eigen writes something very beautiful. We strive to allow the impact to nest in us as we retreat to dream work, to poetic work. Eigen writes, impact is a primary raw datum. It is the most private, intimate fact for meeting. It occurs instantaneously, but needs the analyst's faith, time, and loyalty in order to prosper. It is a description as if impact was a certain seed that you agree to absorb into your body, mind, and energy system, and if you're loyal enough to that impact, things begin to develop and thrive, influencing you and the treatment.